everybody. Hope you all enjoyed the movie. And this is the director, Morgan Neville. Hello, everybody. I really enjoyed that movie.
Great.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background, because you're a documentary filmmaker?
Sure. I've been making documentaries for 20 years. Started 20 years ago this month.
So you
Making
started
my
as a child.
Yeah, well. And I've gravitated over the years doing more and more music documentaries.
Right.
So I grew up playing in bands, and I had a music habit. I would spend way too much money on vinyl records. And I decided if I made music documentaries, I could justify my music habit. So, and I've made documentaries about everything from Hank Williams, Muddy Waters, Johnny Cash, Stax Records, the Brill Building, Burt Bacharach, on and
Right.
on. And, it's just
How
been
did the
wonderful.
idea of background?
So, but the idea for this was very different, because it's not a known subject, and it's not an easy documentary to make. So my producer had the idea. I have to give him the credit, Gil Friesen. And Gil had been president of A&M Records for 20 years. They called him
Albert's
yeah. So Herb Alpert, Jerry Moss were the A&M, and Gil was the ampersand. They called him the ampersand in A&M Records. So, and Gil had gone to see a Leonard Cohen concert a number of years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and Leonard Cohen always had amazing backup singers, and he said he spent the whole concert being transfixed by these singers and wondering what their story was, and he had an idea to make something about backup singers, and he spent about a year thinking about it. And he had talked to many of his friends, including Jimmy Buffett. And Jimmy Buffett actually had said, backup singers, you mean like 20 feet from stardom? So
Perfect.
that's where the title came from. So when I met with Gil, he said, I have an idea for a film about backup singers. And I said, that's really interesting. I don't know much about them. I know a lot about music. I don't know anything about backup singers. What's the idea? And he said, that's your job. But he said, but I have a title. 20 Feet from Stardom.
Which is a great title.
And
it's true.
Exactly. But the whole time I was thinking, is this like, Roger Corman? You make a poster first and you sell it, and then you figure out what the movie is.
Just make it up as you go
Exactly.
along. So how long did it take you to make this? Because you have film, a lot of people are gone, so you had to go through archives to get some of this. But who did you actually interview, or who did the interviewing of Sting or people
Yeah,
like
I
that?
interviewed everybody in the film.
Okay, you did all the interviews.
I did it, yeah.
But you didn't want people to know you were doing it?
Well, you heard my voice a couple times.
Yeah.
You know.
I just wanted to see a shot. You're like the background singer.
Well, usually, but the moment of telling Darlene or telling Mary in the car to turn off her radio, things like that, or questioning Claudia Lanier about appearing in Playboy magazine.
That was great. That was a great shot. That was great.
I had to put my voice in there for those moments, but it was such an immersive experience, because the thing is, there was no map to making this film. There were no books, no documentaries, nothing had been done about backup singers, which was shocking. So, the only way
What
to
did
do
you
it was
learn
to meet
about backup singers? Because I came away, I know all those backups. I know who those people are.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and I came away feeling much sadder for a lot of them, because I think most backup singers, no matter what, they want to be out front, and they just don't have it. I mean,
Well,
Darlene Love is a great singer,
Yeah. Well,
but she
Darlene
never
Love-
had that it.
Yeah, no, but I actually disagree with Darlene. I feel like Darlene had the it. She just ended up in a situation that was unique.
Was it Phil Spector?
Phil Spector. I mean, obviously, one of the big points is talent is not the issue. Talent is like number 3 or 4 on the list of what matters. It's timing, it's luck, it's looks, it's all this stuff. Darlene had a number 1 hit. Sometimes people say, what's the difference between a lead singer and a backup singer? And I say a hit. Darlene had the hits. They just weren't under her name. And Darlene has great charisma, and she was beautiful.
Well, how did Phil Spector get away with that?
Well, Phil Spector,
Who's in
he only got
prison
away
right
with,
now,
he only
yes.
got away with it for so long. He's 20 to life right now.
Right.
But Phil's whole thing is power games. Phil was always about power, and he, so the Blossoms, Darlene's band, they were the house band on Shindig from '64 to '66 for years. So they were on national TV, the first black singers to be on national TV every single week on a hugely popular show. And the entire time, Phil refused to put out a single record with the Blossoms' name on it because he was jealous. I mean, it came down to these weird power games. So Darlene's situation, I feel like she really should have been a star, but she ended up in such a uniquely screwed up situation with Phil.
Yeah, but why did she speak out? Could she not? I mean, if I had a record on the radio and it was under your name, not for one more day would it be under your name.
It's a little different these days. I mean, she says in the beginning, doing the first record, He's a Rebel, she knew that it was going to be a ghost vocal. And so that was kind of the gig. You know, it was really, I think Fine Fine Boy was the one that, Boy I'm Gonna Marry, that was supposed to be her record and ended up coming out under the Crystal's name. And at the time, you know, they were powerless. They didn't have money for lawyers. I mean, if you know, look at the story of the music industry at that time, I mean, I think all the artists, particularly the backup singers, felt powerless. And there was an element of biting the hand that feeds, too. If you get a reputation for suing a producer, that might be the end of your career. And at that time, she was still making really great money singing for all kinds of people.
Yeah. Now I'm amazed Judith Hill is in this picture.
Yeah.
And Judith Hill is fabulous. Judith Hill was on The Voice this year, and she should have won.
She should have.
I mean, but I hadn't watched it, excuse me, and I turned it on the night she did this great solo thing coming downstairs, and I thought this was like already somebody that's a star that I didn't know who it was, and she was just a contestant. So she's going to make it. She's got the it thing.
She does. And the thing about Judith, this is interesting because she went on The Voice after we finished the film. And she told me, and I didn't know what to think about it. And I think it was a good thing she went on the show in the long run. I think it's a good thing she left the show because she's not tied to it forever. But the thing I noticed when she went on the show, there was such a backlash against her from a lot of people. No, just on the internet. You know, I read tons of people that thought, she sang with Michael Jackson, she had it made, she's a pro, what's she doing here? This is supposed to be a competition for amateurs, even though many of the contestants have put out records before. You know, there was this kind of attitude of, you're a backup singer, you've got it made. And believe me, the entire time we were filming this film, Judith was living in her childhood bedroom at her parents' house, saving money to pay for her band to do showcase gigs. Wow. I mean, I think it's one of these gaps between the perception of the backup singer, who looks so glamorous with the stars on stage, and their life. You know, even the Waters, who've been doing it for 50 years, are still wondering where the next paycheck's going to come from.
And I never knew they did all the stuff that the Waters say they did.
That's just the tip of the iceberg.
That's amazing. How long did it take to put this film together?
20 months.
That's not bad. I mean,
too bad. In documentary years, that's pretty fast.
And how'd you raise the money for it?
Well, again, Gil brought in a few other investors, but this film, like I said, films like this don't get made very often because they're not cheap to make.
Right.
And it's hard to make an expensive film about people in the background. You know, it's because we have big songs, and you know, it was not easy. But Gil believed in it and bet on it.
Did anybody that you wanted to be in the film say no?
No, there were a couple songs we wanted. I couldn't get.
Yeah, right. But like, you didn't go to the two of the Supremes and say, "Were you backup singers?"
No. Well, and you know, one of the conscious things about the Supremes or the Vandellas, or you know, that I felt like I didn't want to talk about girl groups. As much as I love girl groups, I felt like I had to be very specific about the type of singer, the kind of voice for hire that would go into different sessions with different singers every day, not knowing if they're going to sing country or blues or whatever. And that was in part a function of the fact that it was such a huge world of backup singing. There's Nashville and you know, all these different realms I could have gone into, and it was really difficult to focus it. I mean, the most difficult thing, hands down, was cutting stuff out of this film because I interviewed 65 backup singers.
And how's the film doing so far? Where's it
doing great.
Yeah, it's gotten great reviews from everybody.
We're 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, we were in New York and LA for 2 weeks, and as of yesterday, we're in 40 cities.
Oh, that's great.
So tell your friends all over the country.
And you're in Palm Desert for a while now.
We are.
Yes,
please, hopefully for a while.
And I'm going to open up for questions in a minute, but I never realized till this movie that Ike Turner was the pimp.
Really?
With
that suit?
I just thought that was Ike Turner. I didn't know what a louse he was either, but you know. Yeah. But as soon as I said he was the pimp and those were the girls, I thought, perfect. Yeah.
It kind of says a lot, doesn't it?
Who has a question? Okay.
Hi, I'm the Palm Springs movie gal, and this is my second screening. I saw it at home the other day, and I just love this film. I used to be a singer, so I have two perspectives from this film, and I just love it. My question is, there's a scene where Lisa's singing, and you see her singing every part, and you brought in her image and married them together. Can you tell us how that came about? Because I thought that was very well done. And
Sure.
Kay just wants to know, there's a scene when Lisa's singing.
Right.
And they break her up into 4 different parts. She's moving her hands differently. How'd you do that?
I had heard that Lisa had created choruses by herself, like whole choirs. And I just wanted to see it. And so I asked her to prepare a piece that she could do. And that's a Samuel Barber piece that she did. And, she did, it's 4-part harmony. She can do anything. She can sing bass, she can sing alto. She's incredible. And it's funny, when we did it, we had sheet music just off camera. And so, I digitally erased all that stuff. But she was sight reading a lot of that. And it's one of these things. I mean, Lisa is such an incredible singer, but it's actually indicative of a lot of backup singing, which is, it looks so effortless, and it looks like they can just do it. But they have chops like it's nobody's business, and they've studied it, and they know it, and Lisa can read. She's an insane sight reader. We did a gig at Sundance when we premiered the film, and Lisa sang, all 5 of them sang. It was amazing, and they sang backup on each other's songs. And my big hope right now is they go on tour later this year. I would love for them to go on tour because it would blow your socks off. But Lisa's first song was I Love You Porgy, the Nina Simone song. And before the song started, the piano player said, "Do you want me to give you the key?" I said, "No." He said, "I've been playing with people for 40 years. I've never heard a singer not ask for the key." And she was just nailed it, just had the most perfect pitch of anybody. So, I mean, they have incredible chops. They just make it look easy.
Yes, right here.
This is kind of about the business of backup singing. Do they get residuals for every time the record is played?
So do they get residuals?
Yeah, do they get residuals? The lady wants to know that.
Well, yes. I mean, they are in unions.
Yeah.
And if you sing on big hits, you can make big money. Mary Clayton just told me a couple weeks ago that Bank of America called, and she sang on Feelin' All Right, the Joe Cocker song, and that's the new Bank of America theme song for the next year. She said they just wrote her a check big enough to live off of for a year.
Oh, that's right.
So,
Bank of America gives me the shakes. Just like Joe Cocker. Yes, sir.
Hi, Rob Simmons. I write the movie page for the CB Weekly. I love this movie. It's the best thing I've seen in months.
Great.
But I have a question about how you mixed and cleaned up the soundtrack. I thought the sound was incredible.
The question is, how did you make the sound sound so incredible?
I mean, I do a lot of music docs. I'm a stickler for getting good production sound. Then we were lucky enough we mixed it at Skywalker Sound, which is the best place in the country for that kind of thing. And I call it filmmaker heaven, because it was like the most tranquil, amazing experience mixing up there. And we spent a lot of time on the sound, just trying to get it right, because it's when you make a music film, the sound is in a way the most important thing. And this segues into another kind of thought of mine, which is the music in a music doc is the most important thing, which seems like a very obvious point, but you'd be amazed at how often you watch a music doc and the music is like wallpaper. It's kind of there to fill in people talking. And, I feel like, when I started this film, the first thing I did was have to identify a lot of backup singing songs, because there are no lists. Your ears, if you ask somebody to name great backup songs, it's hard to come up with 5. So I really spent a year listening to radio and going through every record I had, identifying backup songs, as did our producer and associate producer and everybody. We had to collect them because your brain isn't programmed to notice them. And I put together a soundtrack before we made the film of songs I loved and songs I felt that conveyed the essence of what backup singing was doing at different generations, and songs that had lyrics that had messages about backup singing. And I feel if you can use the songs to actually help tell the story, it's that much stronger in a music doc. It's like one of my things I believe in deeply in doing a music doc, that the music is the story. It's not just adornment.
Was Darlene Love one of the first people you wanted to get a hold of?
She was the first interview we did. The first
Okay.
day, she wasn't, she was
But
like.
you knew her story, probably.
I knew her story, I'd seen her perform before, and I'd read her book. But we didn't know if there was going to be a film in the subject. Like I said, we didn't know, and the first thing we did was interview 50 backup singers. We did oral histories. And the first day, I knew Darlene was top of the list. The first day we interviewed Darlene, and after we finished the interview, it was like a 2.5-hour interview, I turned to Gil, our producer, and said, we can always make a Darlene Love
I
documentary.
was going to say, you do a Darlene Love movie. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I came to see the movie because of Judith Hill, because of the voice. Who I think you're right, at the time I was so angry, I agreed with Ara Levine, I hate the USA. But the one that I am amazed at, and thank you for the movie because of Lisa.
Yeah.
First of all, I was sad because of Lisa, because I thought, my God, this woman is so brilliant, and she's unknown. But then I saw her sing, thanks to you, with Mick Jagger. Understand what she got out of it. When you watch her sing with Mick Jagger, you understand what the backup singers did.
Yeah,
Yes, ladies, but when Lisa sang with Mick Jagger, you understood what a backup singer got. And you agree with me, Judith Hill has it. If she doesn't make it, then there's something wrong.
And I don't think this is public yet, so don't tell anybody, but I think Judith is the opening act on Josh Groban's fall tour. So
That'll be on the radio Monday. No.
don't tell anybody. But that's a great gig for her, because it can show off, because she's a great songwriter. She wrote both the songs in there. She's a real talent. So I feel like, and that's the kind of mature audience I think might work for her too.
When did Darlene Love record the song at the end? When did you do that?
3/4 of the way through production, and I'd had the idea to do that song. And I
Her
got
voice is amazing.
She's incredible,
She's 70, right?
72 now.
Wow.
But just to add one thing to your question about Lisa, or comment, is that, to me, Lisa in a way represents the soul of the film in that she just loves singing. And I don't want everybody to feel like, you said it's sad, and there is sadness, but I feel like for many people, there's another attitude, which is singing can be its own reward, and there is something beautiful about working with other people to make something great. And something the Waters had told me was that they've been singing for 50 years. Oren's first session was "You Lost That Love and Feeling." He got paid $20 to sing.
That's the problem is they don't make enough money.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
That is terrible. But the singing of it, that Oren, because they're at the top of the food pyramid when it comes to backup singers, that he said, acts come along, they have a hit, we'll play with them, sing with them, and they'll have a 3-year career or a 5-year career, maybe a 7-year career, and they're gone. And we've been doing this for 50 years. We have homes, we have families, we've had a great life, and we get paid to do what we love. What's the problem with that? And if you're psychologically, if your ego can handle it,
Yeah.
it can be a great life.
Mhm. Who else has a question? Well, back there first. Yep. You let Miss.
Oh, okay. I wanted to ask you, why you chose Sting and Bruce Springsteen and Chris Botti and Mick Jagger? Why did you choose?
How'd you choose the men that you interviewed? Mick Jagger and, yeah.
I mean, I was impressed so much with their professionalism and how they had no ego about themselves. They were really talking about the quality of
And Sting looked terrible.
Doesn't he always?
Couldn't he put on a decent T-shirt?
But it was important to me that everybody in the film, all these so-called stars in the film, all had a personal connection to one of our main characters. So everybody in the film can speak specifically and personally about one of our main characters. So that they're not just saying bland platitudes about backup singers are lovely. That they're saying Mary can do this or Lisa can do this, because it's personal. And nobody knows what backup singers can do more than the lead singer, believe me. And none of them had ever talked about backup singing before. They'd never answered a question about it before, which was also kind of great to be able to talk to them. And they knew a lot about it. It was actually those were all great interviews to do, because they realized this is something I care about and have never talked about. And it was a chance for them to give something back to people that have made them sound great for decades. And there were other people on the list that I love and would have loved to have talked to, like Leonard Cohen, except for the fact that he didn't have a connection to any of our singers, and that's why I didn't ask him. You know, I felt it was important for it to be organic.
Singers apply the names, or did you just?
Sorry, what's that?
Did the singers say, oh, I know this body and you talk to them?
Did the backup
Did they
singers tell
say-
you, probably lead you to the stars?
Not at all. In fact, I think they were generally surprised when I interviewed them. I mean, when I told Darlene that I interviewed Bruce, or told Lisa I interviewed Mick, you know, they were sort of shocked.
Were
You
they
know,
all
so-
happy to do the interviews with Mick and Bruce and, you know, my
They
good
were. I
buddies?
mean-
Were they happy?
The guys, they were. I mean, it's never easy to get all those people to do an interview. But in terms of how it normally goes, I think it was a little easier for us. You know, Bruce and Mick don't really do interviews. You know,
That's what I was wondering.
You know,
Did they get paid for these interviews?
no.
That's good, okay. No, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Bruce?
Yeah, you mentioned that the Blossoms were like the first black backup group. I wonder if you could qualify that a little bit, because I'm sure that the Rayettes were singing before them.
Yeah.
And Ike Turner's group, and maybe all the way back to Zephyr Park.
Sure.
Why'd you call the Blossoms the first black backup group?
Well, I mean, what she says is they're the first black backup singers that went into the studios to sing with white singers. You know, and even, I mean, yes, the Rayettes had started in the mid-'50s. I mean, the Blossoms started going into the studios in '58. You know, in New York, there was a group called the Sweet Inspirations that started a little bit later. That was Cissy Houston's band, and originally with her cousins, Dee Dee Warwick and Dionne Warwick, who did a similar thing on a lot of the Atlantic records, and they were great, amazing singers. But it was that group of black singers crossing into the session work. And, you know, they even said when they went in to do one of the first sessions with Sam Cooke, and Sam Cooke saw them and was shocked. You know, he'd never seen another African American on a session before. They were always white musicians. So yeah, certainly the Rayettes predate that, you know, and that idea, you know, in the R&B world, which, you know, Ray and Ike and everybody existed in.
There was a black union at one time in the White.
Sure, yeah, there were two different musician unions. So that, I guess, was the fine point I was trying to make.
I think Perry Como could have used the Blossoms.
Oh, yeah.
Those three girls were hysterical. I mean, it was like a shampoo commercial. Yes, the lady all the way in the back. That's you.
I first saw Lisa Fisher in the Shine a Light, which is the Rolling Stones show that was on IMAX, and she just blew it away. And I'm really happy to see her in your film. I wanted to know, though, about that the Harleys. Did they
Yeah.
get chopped from the
So,
How about Bette Midler's Harlettes?
Yeah, well, and Lisa, by the way, she's still touring with the Stones, and she's playing at Hyde Park day after
Wow.
tomorrow with the Stones in London for like 150,000 people or something. So she's still doing it, and Tata's on the road with Elton right now. I've been trying to get them to come
Tata
help,
Vega.
help promote the film, but they're out there working. So in the iterations of backup singers, there were a few groups, the Rayettes really being kind of the originators. Ike Turner was a massive Ray Charles fan, so he started, if Ray had the Rayettes, he'd have the Ikeettes. And Bette loved Tina Turner and the Ike and Tina Turner reviews. So she said, well, if he's going to have the Ikeettes, I'm going to have the Harlettes. That was Bette Midler's band. And those three groups each probably had anywhere from 40 to 80 different singers pass through them over the decades. And they were almost like the colleges for backup singers. I mean, virtually anybody who's a backup singer in those decades spent time in one of those three groups. Charlotte Crossley, who we interviewed, was one of Bette's singers. And Bette was she was one of those few connoisseurs of backup singing, too. I mean, she appreciated the tradition and the idiom of having the backup singers. And that's why I wanted to talk to her. And the Harlettes were fantastic. I mean, Bette always, and she used them in a way that was almost kind of postmodern or ironic, you know, the way, I mean, she was amazing the way she used them, but she was playing with the conventions of the backup singers too, which was so great.
Anybody else have a question? Yes, this lady right here.
I was wondering, is it possible to buy the soundtrack from the film?
Good thing you asked about the
Is it
soundtrack.
possible to buy? Is it possible to buy the soundtrack? Mr.
Yes, is
Devil?
the answer.
How would one buy the soundtrack?
Columbia Records just put it out last week. So it's on iTunes. You can buy the physical DVD if there's a record store left.
Yeah.
And Yeah, but most of the tunes are in it, all the ones we recorded originally, and I didn't know if that was ever going to happen, but I love the fact that it happened. And it's been one of these incredible things about this film since we premiered it at Sundance in January. It's just been this incredible ride for me, but even more so for these singers. I mean, yeah, we've had the soundtrack, but I just have to get these plugs. Mary Clayton, there's a Best of Mary Clayton that came out this week of her solo records, which is absolutely phenomenal. Darlene Love had written a book that's been out of print for 10 years. It went back into print this week. They just reissued it. Claudia Lanier's one album is coming out on CD for the first time next
So
month.
you revived a lot of careers.
Yeah, I mean, it's happening now. And like I said, that's something to make a film about people who had missed opportunities and then have that film somehow create new opportunities. I never allowed myself to imagine that might happen, but it's
You
actually
did a good
happening.
thing.
Yeah.
You did a good thing.
Yeah.
Did you talk to Darlene Love? I didn't know the part about her becoming a maid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really crashing and burning.
Yeah.
Did you talk to her about that? I mean,
Sure.
and what was her, I mean, was it just out of depression and just saying, screw it, the hell with it?
I think it was because she decided she wasn't going to do backup work. I think, she took that leap and said, if I'm not going to be a lead singer, I'm not going to sing. And she did that for a number of years. Later on, as she tried to build her solo career, and she moved to New York, and then there were a number of people in New York, like Steve Van Zandt and Bruce Springsteen and Paul Schaefer, and people that loved her and appreciated those 60s records that helped her rebuild her career, and she started doing music theater and bit by bit. But she started singing backup again. And somebody else that actually gave her one of her first gigs back in New York was Luther Vandross, who was a huge fan of backup singing, and David Lasley, who lives here in town, who's an amazing backup singer, the guy with the blonde hair.
I didn't know Luther Vandross was in the Young Americans.
Is that incredible?
It is
Yeah.
incredible, and quite an outfit he's wearing.
The
late
three-piece
great-
suit,
yeah, that's-
sweating like a pig,
the
singing like an
jean-
angel.
Yes, this gentleman here.
Hey, I have a comment and a question. My comment is, I think my favorite part of the film is when you're focusing on Amy Shelter, and is it Mary that sings that?
Yeah.
I just love that song. I never knew who that vocal was, so now I feel it's like a little gift I got, so thank you for that.
Sure.
But the question is, I was kind of a little confused when we were talking about Sweet Home Alabama. I wasn't sure if you were saying that the song itself and Leonard Skinner were being subversive to the song, or if just the backup singers were saying, I'm going to sing this, but only if I can interpret it in this way.
The question is, were the backup singers thinking that Sweet Home Alabama was subversive, or is the song itself subversive? Because that was really interesting, Sweet
And
Home
those are
Alabama.
kind of two separate questions, because whether or not Sweet Home Alabama is a subversive or ironic song is still being debated. And if you go online, you can find web pages devoted to it and people debating it, and Wikipedia going on about it. I think Mary's take on it was that it wasn't being subversive, but that her act of singing was her own statement upon the song. So I don't think she was thinking that they were being ironic about celebrating Alabama. So even though that might have happened, it was separate from her take on it.
The movie gal.
Yes, you mentioned Sundance. Were you surprised that you won the jury prize at Sundance?
We didn't win the jury prize.
I'm sorry.
We were nominated for the jury
You were
prize.
nominated.
I
know
read
you-
that
If he had won the
finalist.
prize
Yeah.
at Sundance, I would have told you he won the prize at Sundance. But
I'm
you
sorry,
were
I read that
nominated.
somewhere.
Is
We were.
nominated almost as good as winning?
No.
No, I know. Thank you for your honesty. I like that. Yeah, I
But
think
we were-
when you watch it, it's just
we
great
did have an
being
incredible
nominated.
experience. I mean, we were the opening night film at Sundance, and we had like the old school Sundance experience. Opening night, we stayed up all night. We had meetings with distributors, and we sold it at dawn. We shook hands at dawn, and it was just. And like I said, from that moment on till now, it hasn't stopped. It's just been.
It's just getting
incredible.
better and better.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, and
Oscar.
but you work on films like this for years, and we'd never shown it to an audience before that night. And the funny thing was,
That's the first night you ever
Yeah.
sat with an audience?
yeah, I mean, I'd shown it to like a handful of friends, but I'd never shown it to an audience. And the funny thing was, when we got into Sundance, and we're the opening night film, and that's a huge deal. And I called our singers and said to them, like Mary, I remember saying, Mary, we're into Sundance Film Festival with the opening night film. She said, what's that? And I said, well, we're going to go to Utah in January. She's like, what are you talking about? Well, I'm not going to Utah in January. There are no black people in Utah. and none of them had seen the film till the premiere, till Sundance. And it wasn't until they showed up that night, and there were 1,200 people sitting there, and they hadn't seen the film, and they sat through it, and it was just this kind of night that changed all of our lives. You know, it's the kind of thing you dream about happening, and you know, I'm so happy I was able to share that with them too.
That's great. Anybody else have a question? This gentleman.
About how many hours of footage did you shoot, and about how many hours did it take to edit all that together?
How many hours of footage did you shoot, and how long did it take to put it together?
We had about 225 hours of footage, and we edited for about 10 months. And right now, I have to point out, Doug Blush, our editor, is in town. And Doug accompanied me out tonight to keep me company when we drove out here. So thank you, Doug. His parents have a house here. So.
Are you going to stay? Is it warm enough?
It's never warm enough.
Is there a date for the Blu-ray?
Date for the Blu-ray?
I think it's going to be like October. You know, it's still months away. So we want people to see it in theaters. And I have to say, it's a theatrical experience from the theater manager right there. You know, there are a lot of documentaries that you can watch on a DVD at home, but this really feels like a communal type of film. It plays so great with an audience that I love people to share in that experience. So please tell all of your friends to come see it.
Yeah, the lady all the way in the back, but I just want to say while I remember, the funniest scene to me, when you're showing a couple of the old TV shows, and the iCats, everybody's rocking, and the audience is sitting like this. Were they not allowed to move? It's unbelievable. It looks like they're in prison.
They're petrified.
Yeah, it looks like they weren't real. Yes, ma'am.
The Bro Building documentary I made, that is on DVD. It's called Hitmakers. I wonder if it's on Netflix too.
It's called Hitmakers?
Hitmakers. It's part of, it came out in a box set, 2 DVD box set, because I did a Burt Bacharach documentary, a Lee Burn Stoller documentary, and a 2-hour Bro Building documentary. And it's, this box set's called the Songmakers Collection. So it's on Amazon. You can find it for cheap now, like $5.
What's next? Do you know what you're going to do next?
The thing I've been working on, a little bit of a left turn, well, 2 things actually. I've been working on a Yo-Yo Ma documentary.
Nice.
And that's been really interesting. He's fantastic. And it's about this Silk Road project he's been doing for 12 years, and about how he's trying to kind of use music to bridge divides, you know, where politics can't, you know, and he's playing with all different kinds of musicians. So I've been doing that. And I've been working on a documentary about the rivalry between Gore Vidal and Weymouth Buckley, too.
That was a great rivalry.
And their televised debates they had in
That was
'68.
fun.
So
that's when
those
we
are
had
the 2
smart,
things.
That's when we had smart people doing things like that.
TV.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
I just want to point out one edit that you did that was so awesome. It was when Lisa, she was bending down, and then she was in the post office bending down. Awesome.
Well, you got credit for a great edit. You got credit for a great movie, and
Thank
a big
you.
thank you for bringing backup singers to life. One more question? Going once. Okay.
What percentage of your budget went to pay for the music licenses and the clips?
What percentage of the budget went to pay for the music licenses and the clips?
It wasn't crazy. It was like maybe 30% of our budget went to licensing. That's all. But we did come up with a structure that basically meant that if we make money, they make money. So we didn't have to pay a ton of front money on things for the music. So it's complicated. Music licensing's a whole other headache.
And what camera did you use?
What camera did you
We used
use?
a bunch of different cameras, everything from a Red to a 5D. So.
Well, okay, we want to thank you so much. Well, thank you for the
Thank
movie.
you so much.
Thank you for making the
Guys.
movie and bringing us up to date and continued success.
Absolutely.